Hello, today I wanted to talk about interfaces in object-oriented design, what they are, why you should use them, and an example from my project, and cautions less things to think about before using them. What are interfaces in object-oriented design? They are contracts. Each class that implements that interface must live up to the contract. The contract leaves it up to each class on how to live up to the rules it set. The rules are services and properties, functions, plus variables it defined. They're another layer of abstraction in object-oriented design. They separate the definitions from the implementations. Unlike abstract classes, they do not actually implement, although modern updates do allow some implementations. That's not the original purpose of interfaces. And why do we use interfaces? For one, they make testing easier. You don't need to worry about the infrastructure. You can simply test that the classes implementing the email interface, for example, have a send function. You don't actually have to send an email every time to test the implementation. You can provide mock data instead to test the core functionality. Another reason is that other developers can know what needs to be implemented. I read from an article that provided a list of pros and cons, and I like how it pointed out that especially early in development, it can help you to start testing earlier and have a clear direction in what needs to be implemented. This can help both you and other developers that either inherit or collaborate. It can also help separate out work. Ultimately, it is up to every class on how to live up to the contract. This provides more freedom than abstracts slash inheriting from a parent class. The different classes implementing don't need to be related either. I wrote up this example here. This isn't exactly how I'm doing it in my project, but this fits well within this presentation. I have different types of costs I'm trying to calculate. Ultimately, I want to be able to calculate the cost per mile driven for users. I can have an iCalculable interface with a defined calculate cost per mile function that every class that follows this contract needs to provide. It's up to each class on what variables go into that class and into that cost. From the previous slide, I mentioned how interfaces can help separate out work. Different teams can work on different implementations while following the same contract. Um, Obviously, this is a simple example, but I could handle the gas cost implementation. Another developer or another team could handle the routine maintenance costs implementation. We both teams would know that they need to implement the calculate cost per mile function. And what goes into that cost per mile is up to each team to figure out. And each class can provide its own variables that go into that cost. Cautions are just things to think about before using interfaces. They do add more complexity to your file structure. Preferably, you'd keep them separate from your actual implementations, but this could potentially get messy as the code grows. I think some of that could be mitigated with experience, but at the same time, think about what you actually need for your project. Not every class needs an interface either. Any changes to the interface can break your code, which isn't a bad thing, but something to be aware of. Before you add, think about whether every implementation actually needs to implement that service or have that property. This can get especially messy if you have multiple classes inheriting or implementing the interface. Think about whether you can is that a problem specific to all the implementations? Does every implementation need that property or that service? Or is this something that is just unique to that one class? Um, but overall though, focusing on adding interfaces to my code structure has helped me better understand object-oriented design and the flow of code. It helps keep code independent and provide structure and future adaptability.